What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to make a video that is essentially a straight up contradiction on everything that I've said so far about the specialist system, and we're going to be talking about why the specialist system in 2042 is actually completely fine. If you guys have been watching my videos since the beta, you'll know that I've had a pretty strong opinion towards the specialist system. I'm not the biggest fan of it for the all-out warfare portion of the game, but one thing that I try to do is always sort of just play devil's advocate to my own opinions and try to just look at things from the other perspective, as I think that is an important thing to do, especially as a content creator. So despite some of my more negative or critical thoughts on the specialist, today's video is going to be talking about some of the reasons why I think they could be great. Before we get into it, if you guys are new to the channel and you end up enjoying the video, then do consider subscribing and turning on those notifications so that you don't miss out on any upcoming Battlefield 2042 content. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So like I said, just putting it straight out there, I do not like the specialist system for the all-out warfare portion of the game. I personally think it just leaves the loadouts a little bit too open and kind of makes everyone a one-man army at times. And being a huge fan of the regular class system, it just kind of sucks to see that go away as well, but I do see some potential positives for the system overall. Now, one of these is just very quick and simple. Battlefield Portal will allow us to revert to the class system anyway, so now we have the best of both worlds, with people who enjoy the specialists being able to use them and those who prefer the class system being able to use them as well. And it's kind of just a win-win because of Portal. I'm not going to ramble on about that any further, simply because I have a whole video on that from a few days ago. So if you want to hear more about how Portal can fix the specialist issue, then be sure to check that one out, but that is pretty much all I need to say for it in this video. Now, one of the reasons that I think the specialist system could be actually pretty great is simply because of how they're going to work in Hazard Zone. I know the large majority of the Battlefield community probably isn't going to play all that much Hazard Zone, so this might not really resonate with a lot of you guys, but for any of you who do enjoy that sort of Battle Royale-esque game mode, whether it's an actual Battle Royale or just something like Tarkov or Hunt Showdown, for example, I think Hazard Zone could be a lot of fun for us, and the specialist system adds an extra layer of depth to that, in my opinion. One thing that's great about a game like Apex, for example, is the sort of hero shooter element to it, where it really matters who you choose at the start of a game and which legend you have between yourself and your other teammates as a combination. It just adds an extra layer to the game rather than just everyone being exactly the same. You all kind of have a certain playstyle or role within the team that allows you to play in a unique way, and also adds a lot to the replayability because each game will be different if you are choosing different characters. That same sort of effect will likely take place in Hazard Zone 2, since choosing the right specialist not only for yourself individually but for your team as a whole is super important to that specific match, and it really can make a big difference to the outcome of the game. That hero shooter element really just adds something else for you to master and something else for you to try and learn over the course of the game's lifespan. For example, if everyone is just the same, then all you really have to learn and master is the weapons and just the best places on the map, for example. But by adding in the specialist, it is just something else for you to kind of grind for and learn about throughout the game. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I love that aspect to hero shooters. It feels like there's a lot more sort of improvement for you to make, and therefore there's just a lot more replay value. I remember when Warzone first launched, and after having played some Apex and then seeing that Warzone had operators, I was really excited by the prospect of having to learn each and every character, figure out which ones I liked and disliked, and then trying to master those characters. But once I realized that the operators were literally just skins, I felt like the game was kind of going backwards on that aspect from what we'd all experienced in Apex, and although the game didn't necessarily suffer from it, it is something that I would have loved to see in that game. Because of that, and the fact that we now have a Battlefield game with this sort of intense squad-based game mode in it, and we have the specialists that all have different abilities and traits and actual roles within the team, I feel so excited by that after seeing how well it played in Apex. And so for me, despite it not being my favorite thing in all-out warfare, I'd honestly go as far as saying that I absolutely love it for Hazard Zone, and I think it will definitely add to the experience overall. Now, one last reason that I think the specialist system is completely fine for all-out warfare, despite again not really liking it all that much myself, is that at the end of the day, DICE do have to try and innovate and adapt to keep this franchise moving forward. And although this might not end up being a good thing for this particular game, I think it is great that they have at least tried it, because at the end of the day, it could end up being amazing, and even if it's not, then we'd never know that if they just stuck to the same thing each and every title. The gaming industry, and specifically multiplayer gaming, is a pretty volatile market at the end of the day. It's a kind of dog-eat-dog world, and all of these companies, whether it be Activision, Ubisoft, EA, and pretty much just any of the other big companies out there, they all have to adapt, innovate, and move forward, or else eventually their games will drop off, which is a bad thing both for the companies themselves, but also for the fans of those franchises. As much as we might all say that the class system is fine and Battlefield's fine and we should just, keep it close to how it was in the glory days with Battlefield 3 and 4, I'd counter that with this. Call of Duty has stuck to their guns without truly innovating anything in that franchise in terms of like the actual base games anyway. Obviously Warzone is doing amazing, but for the actual base like 6v6 games that they release, they're really just the same shit every year, and at this point it is just kind of getting boring. One thing the Battlefield has always done is have some pretty drastic differences from the launch of one game to the next, adding in huge new features like the behemoth system or the attrition system or fortification system, innovating on the evolution like they did in Battlefield 4, changing up the 4 core classes like they have done between most games. There's always just some pretty big differences between titles, despite the core game generally still feeling like Battlefield. As much as some people might be resistant to change, that's one thing that I've actually always enjoyed, in that each game feels very different. You can always remember which game was which, unlike Call of Duty, where as fun as they might all be, they kind of just blur together sometimes and you can hardly remember what was the difference between each one. Now again, change doesn't instantly equal improvement. For example, some changes can be awesome and some can be terrible, like for example the attrition system in Battlefield 5, but at the end of the day, to keep your franchise moving forward and to learn what does and doesn't work, sometimes you need to just bite the bullet and make some pretty big changes, because at the end of the day, there's only one way to find out what works. Looking at Call of Duty again, their base games really were trending down, and although they were still selling well, Activision knew they needed to try something, so they bit the bullet. They tried Blackout in Black Ops 4, and when that didn't work as well as they wanted, they once again tried to innovate with Warzone, making it free, adding things that had never been seen in a battle royale like the Gulag or contracts for example, and they found a bunch of elements that did work, which they never would have found if they just did Blackout 2 but on a different map for example. Although they didn't innovate their actual base games, they did innovate the battle royale area, and that shot Warzone right to the top for a very long time. And when you look at it like that, their base games didn't innovate and they were dropping off quite a bit, while their battle royale did innovate and it became one of the most popular games of the year. At the end of the day, if Battlefield as a franchise wants to compete in the FPS market, not only just survive but actually thrive, they do need to try new things, and while some of them definitely won't work, some of them could turn out to be amazing, and those are things that we just never really would have known if they never tried them. Like I said earlier, they could have tried these specialists and they could have genuinely been the greatest addition to the franchise so far, and that would have been a great thing for the game overall. Unfortunately, it just seems that isn't the case, as most people seem to not really like them, but as a silver lining, now we kind of just know that this sort of hero shooter element does not work in Battlefield. So in the next Battlefield game, I'm almost certain that the classes will return, and at least now we have learned from that past experience, meaning that the franchise and the next game specifically can actually benefit from that. Trying new things really can't hurt at the end of the day. It's either a success and everyone praises you for it, or it's a failure and, you know, maybe everyone hates you for it. But even if it's the latter, you can still use that information for future titles and therefore improve the game over time. That's how games continue to improve and evolve, and if DICE just kept doing the same thing on repeat each and every time, we'd unfortunately just never know, as well as getting pretty bored of the same thing every time. As weird as it might sound, even though I don't really like the specialist system for the base game modes, I'm honestly pretty glad that they tried to change things up and innovate and just keep things moving forward. And the great thing is that with Portal there, it kind of just makes this seemingly failed specialist system a pretty small issue anyway, so we get the benefit of them learning and gathering information, while we won't really suffer the consequences because we can simply play Portal instead with our normal class systems. It's definitely an interesting topic, and again, despite my issues with it, I don't think it's nearly as bad as most people are making it out to be. But with that being said, I am very keen to hear your thoughts on it too, so regardless of how you feel, be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. If you guys want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you all out there on the battlefield.